Can I ask you something personal? And I mean that genuinely. I'm not just saying it as a way to begin. I actually want you to stop for a second, put down whatever else you were half thinking about, and really sit with this question. When was the last time you and your partner had a real conversation? Not the kind where you're talking about whose turn it is to take the car in for an oil change. Not the kind about what you're doing this weekend or whether the kids need new shoes or what you want to order for dinner. I mean the other kind. The kind that used to happen more often than it does now. The kind where you were actually curious about each other. Where you asked something and genuinely waited for the answer. Where the conversation went somewhere real, somewhere personal. And when it was over you felt like you'd been in the same room together, emotionally speaking, in a way that actually meant something. If you're sitting with that question and coming up a little empty, if you're scanning back through the last few weeks and having some trouble landing on a specific example, then something in what I'm about to say is going to feel familiar. Possibly uncomfortably familiar. Here is what the outside of your life might look like right now. You and your partner come home to each other every evening. You eat at the same table, or at least in the same general orbit of the kitchen. You share a bed. You share children probably, and a mortgage and a calendar that has both your names on it, and a life that is from the outside completely thoroughly shared. And yet, there is this thing that happens. In some marriages. In a lot of marriages, actually. It happens slowly, almost imperceptibly, over a long stretch of time. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. It barely looks like anything from the inside for a while. It's not a fight. It's not a betrayal. It's not a moment you could circle on a calendar and point to and say, that's where things started to go wrong. It's more like a drift. The way a boat drifts from a dock when no one's holding the rope. Not dramatically. Not with any urgency. Just quietly. Gradually. One morning you look up and the dock is further away than you thought. And you're not entirely sure when that happened. Two people. Same house. Same table. Same bed. Same life technically. But somehow, and this is the part that is so hard to put into words, not quite sharing each other. Moving through the same days on separate parallel tracks. Intersecting sometimes for logistics or for the children or for a crisis that demands coordination. But rarely if ever actually meeting. In the way that the word together is supposed to mean. No crisis. No abieronis. Just the quiet, persistent ache of feeling alone in a house that is clearly not empty. If something in you recognize that, if your chest did a small thing when I described it, I want you to stay. Because that feeling has a name. And having a name for something is the beginning of being able to do something about it. What we're going to talk about today is what therapists and researchers call the parallel marriage. We're going to look at it carefully, what it actually feels like from the inside, how it gets started, what allows it to deepen over the years, and then, and this is the part one most want you to reach, what it takes to find your way back. Not with grand gestures. Not with a dramatic conversation that requires perfect timing and courage you don't currently have. Just with a direction. A beginning. A first step taken tonight on an ordinary evening, in the direction of the person you chose. I'm really glad you're here. Let's go there together. I want to start by saying something that I think matters before anything else does. The parallel marriage is not what most people think of when they think about a marriage in trouble. When people imagine a troubled marriage, they imagine conflict. Raised voices. Long silences that follow arguments that nobody wins. Contempt in the small daily interactions. The sense of active damage, something being broken visibly in front of both people. The parallel marriage has almost none of that. Which is part of what makes it so hard to catch. It is a marriage in which two people have gradually over time without a specific decision or a specific moment, stopped genuinely. Sharing their interior lives with each other. Not their schedule. Not their practical life. Those things continue perfectly well. But the deeper things. The real things. What you're actually worried about at 11 o'clock at night. What you've been thinking about on the drive to work. What you hope for quietly in the moments when the world goes still for a minute. Those things, those have stopped traveling between you. They stay inside. And over time, both people have retreated into their own separate inner world. And they have learned, with impressive efficiency, to coexist without ever quite meeting there. The word parallel is doing a lot of work in that phrase, and it's worth sitting with for a moment. In geometry, parallel lines share a direction. They travel at the same pace. They never crash into each other. They never veer dramatically apart. They simply maintain with mathematical precision a consistent distance. Always close. Always alongside. Never touching. That is the parallel marriage. Two people, same direction, same pace, same house. Maintaining, with their own kind of mathematical precision, a distance that feels comfortable and has become invisible. And in 2026, this is far more common than most people realize. The research, surveys, clinical data, couples therapy intake forms, all points the same direction. A significant and growing number of married people describe their relationship not as one in conflict, but as one in which they simply feel disconnected. Not dramatically, not acutely, just as a baseline, as the ordinary condition of a Tuesday and a Wednesday and most of the Sundays in a given year. They are not in crisis. They are simply not close. And they have been not close for long enough that not close has started to feel like the natural state of things. Like this is just what long-term marriage settles into. Like anyone who expects more than this is being a little naive about how life works. That is the story the parallel marriage tells about itself. And it is, I want to say clearly, not true. What it actually feels like, the signs that are easy to miss. I want to walk through the signs of a parallel marriage slowly and specifically, because I think a lot of people will recognize their own relationship in these descriptions, and then immediately argue themselves out of that recognition. Tell themselves it's normal. Tell themselves everyone feels this way after a while. Tell themselves it's fine. It isn't fine. But let's look at what it actually is. The first and most central sign is that you no longer know each other's inner world in anything close to real time. You know your partner in the way you know a place you've lived for many years. You know their history, their patterns, the things they worried about 5 years ago, and the things that made them laugh 10 years ago, and the general shape of who they are as a person. You have all of that. But their actual current interior life, what is weighing on them this week, what they are quietly hoping for in this particular season, what has been shifting in how they think about themselves or their work or their future, that you are genuinely uncertain about. Because the conversations that would have told you those things have stopped happening. Neither of you is sharing and neither of you is asking, and it's been long enough that this has stopped feeling like a gap and started feeling like simply how things are. The second sign lives in the texture of your everyday conversation. Think honestly about what you actually talk about in a typical week. And I mean really honestly, not what you think you should be talking about, but what you actually do talk about. If the answer is mostly logistics, scheduling, the children, shared responsibilities, and occasional commentary on things you both saw on a screen, if real conversation, the kind that requires you to actually show up as a full human being rather than a household administrator, if that has mostly disappeared, you are describing a parallel marriage. The practical life of the relationship is very much intact. The relational life of it has quietly gone quiet. The third sign is evenings. The way evenings feel now versus how they used to feel. Not tense. Not unhappy in any acute way. Just separate. Each of you gravitates to your own corner of the couch, or your own room, or your own stream of content on your own screen. You are in the same house but somehow in entirely different worlds. And the thing that is most worth paying attention to is not that this happens, all couples have evenings like this, but that it has stopped feeling strange. That this is just Tuesday. That neither of you reaches across the space between you because reaching has started to feel like more effort than the evening seems to warrant. The fourth sign is the disappearance of genuine curiosity. You used to want to know what your partner was thinking about. You used to ask. You used to feel a pull, real, organic, specific, toward the interior life of this particular person. That pull has faded. And it has faded on both sides because both of you have gradually learned, without ever saying so, that the bids for that kind of depth don't really get met anymore. So you stop making them. And the curiosity atrophies the way any capacity atrophies when it goes unused. The fifth sign is the quality of the loneliness you feel. And this one is the most important and the most painful to sit with honestly. The loneliness of the parallel marriage is not the loneliness of being alone. It is the loneliness of being beside someone. Close enough to touch, sharing the same blanket, breathing the same air, and still feeling profoundly, bewilderingly alone. That is a specific and very particular kind of loneliness. Harder in some ways than simple aloneness because at least when you're alone, the loneliness makes sense. This kind carries a question with it that never quite gets answered. Why do I feel this way when I am technically not by myself? The sixth sign is where you take the hard things. In a genuinely connected marriage, when something difficult happens, a frightening diagnosis, a terrible week at work, a conversation with a parent that left you unsettled, A wave of anxiety that arrived without a clear reason. The instinct is to bring it to your partner. Not to have them fix it. Just to share it. To be witnessed in it. To not carry it alone. In a parallel marriage, that instinct has been slowly trained out of existence. You process the hard things elsewhere, in the car or in your head on a long walk, or with a friend who has somehow become the person you actually tell things to. And then you come home, and your partner is there. And you don't tell them. Because somewhere along the way, without either of you deciding this, your partner stopped being the person you bring the hard things to. How it happens, the 3 roots that nobody talks about understanding how the parallel marriage develops is, I think, just as important as being able to recognize it. Because I want to be very clear about something. This is not a pathology of weak marriages. This is not something that happens because 2 people are poorly suited to each other, or because one person failed in some fundamental way. This is something that happens to people who love each other. Through a combination of forces that most couples never quite see coming until the drift has already gone on for a long time. The first root is something that lives in each of us long before we ever met our partner. It is our attachment history. The emotional blueprint we formed in the earliest years of our life about what love feels like, how safe it is to need someone, and whether being known by another person is something to move toward or something to be careful about. For people who grew up in environments where expressing vulnerability or need led consistently to disappointment, where reaching for connection meant encountering withdrawal or discomfort, or simply an absence of anyone who could meet them there, something very specific happens in the nervous system over time. It learns to manage. It learns to need less. It learns that self-reliance is safer than dependence, that keeping the interior life private is safer than sharing it, that side-by-side is more comfortable than face-to-face. In the attachment literature, we call this an avoidance style. And the people who carry it are not cold, and they are not indifferent, and they are often deeply capable of love. They have simply learned very early, through no fault of their own, that closeness is something that needs to be approached carefully, managed, kept at a certain distance. When 2 people with these tendencies find each other, and they often do, because avoidant people are frequently drawn to each other's capacity for independence and self-sufficiency, the parallel marriage can take root almost naturally, without conflict, without anyone being unkind, just 2 people defaulting quietly and without noticing, to the level of intimacy that each of their nervous systems has decided is safe, which is a level that is comfortable and warm in its way but not deep, not vulnerable, together but not truly close. The second root is more ordinary, and in some ways more universal. It is the slow death of the habits that used to make intimacy happen on its own. In the beginning of most relationships, connection is easy. There is novelty everywhere, and novelty generates conversation. There is desire to be known, and that desire generates disclosure. There is time, so much more unstructured, unhurried time. And time generates the long, wandering, genuinely curious conversations that make 2 people feel truly known by each other. You asked each other things. You answered honestly. You stayed up too late because the talking was more interesting than sleep. And then life settles. The routines arrive, the work schedules, the children, the household management, the years of accumulated responsibility. The unstructured time disappears. The novelty fades. The space that conversation used to live in fills up with other things, all of them legitimate, none of them wrong, all of them quietly crowding out the thing that no one thought to protect because it used to happen on its own. Until the day you look up and realize that you genuinely cannot remember the last time you felt truly close to this person. And you cannot quite pinpoint when that changed. But it has. The third root is the one that takes the longest to see clearly. It is the accumulation of small ruptures, tiny moments of disconnection, that happened over years and were never repaired. Every relationship has these moments. One partner reaches and the other isn't quite there. Someone needed something and didn't get it. A conversation that should have been had got redirected. A bid for closeness went unanswered. Not out of cruelty, just out of distraction or exhaustion, or simply not noticing. These moments individually mean very little. They are the small friction of any shared life. But when they consistently go unacknowledged, when no one comes back to say I noticed what happened there, I know I wasn't quite present, I want to try again, they leave a residue. Small. Invisible. Like sediment on the floor of a river. One layer means nothing. But layer after layer after layer over years, and suddenly the river is much shallower than it used to be. The current is slower. The depth is gone, and neither person can say exactly when the river changed, only that it has. 6 ways back. Because a direction is enough to begin. Before I walk you through these, I want to say something that I hope lands as genuinely hopeful rather than as pressure. These 6 steps are not a curriculum. They are not a program. They are not 6 things that have to happen in order on schedule with both people fully committed and emotionally ready. They are 6 small movements in a direction. 6 ways of beginning to shift something that has been moving the wrong way for a while. And here is what matters most. You do not need your partner to begin simultaneously. A marriage is a system. And when one part of a system begins to behave differently, when one person starts asking different questions, responding differently to small moments, showing up with a different quality of presence, the system does not stay where it was. It can't, because you are part of it, and you have changed. And the ripples of that change move outward in ways that are quiet but real. Your partner may not respond right away. They may not seem to notice at first. Old patterns run deep, and deep patterns don't reorganize overnight. But consistent, genuine movement in the direction of connection, maintained not for a week but over time, with patience, with real intention, creates conditions that make your partner's movement toward you more possible. It creates an atmosphere. A small but real shift in the climate between you. You can start this. You don't have to wait. Begin where you are. The first step. Say the thing out loud. Everything else rests on this. And it is the step that people most reliably skip because it is the most uncomfortable. Name it. To yourself first. Sit with the honest version of the questions I asked at the beginning of this video. When did I last feel genuinely close to this person? When did I last tell them something real? Something from my actual interior life, not just the surface of my day. When did they last share something real with me? Do I know what they are carrying right now? Do they know what I am? Sit with those questions without softening the answers. Because the parallel marriage survives on the comfortable story that nothing is wrong. That this is just what long-term love looks like. That anyone who expects more is being romantic and unrealistic. That story is false. But it is very, very comfortable. And comfort, in the absence of crisis, is one of the most powerful forces keeping people exactly where they are. And then when you are ready, which does not mean when you are fearless, because you may never quite reach fearless, say it together. Not as an accusation, not as a catalog of failures or a list of grievances, as something that belongs to both of you, offered with care, from a place of missing rather than blaming. Something like, I've been thinking about us, about how we've been moving alongside each other lately without really being with each other. And I miss you. I genuinely miss the feeling of being close to you. I'd love to find our way back to that, if you would too. That conversation is not a solution. It is a door. And some doors, once opened, change what becomes possible in a way that nothing else can. The second step. Get curious again. Even before you feel it, the defining feature of the parallel marriage, underneath everything else, is the disappearance of genuine curiosity. 2 people who have stopped being truly interested in each other's interior life. Not because the interest was never there, but because the interest, like any capacity that goes unused, has quietly atrophied. The thing about curiosity is that you do not have to wait for it to return before you start acting as though it has. Curiosity in a long-term relationship is not only a feeling, it is also a practice, a decision, a choice to ask even before the organic pull is fully there, and to actually receive what comes back. Gottman developed what he calls open-ended questions. Questions designed specifically to invite a partner into genuine self-disclosure. To open rather than close. To remind the other person that their inner world is something you are interested in. They sound like this. What's something you've been sitting with lately that you haven't mentioned? Is there anything you've been wanting from me that I haven't been giving you? What does this time of your life feel like, honestly? If you had to describe it, what are you actually looking forward to right now, even something small? Is there something you've been carrying that I don't know about? These questions require something from the person asking them. They signal genuine interest, which means opening yourself to a genuine answer, one that might require you to actually show up in response. That is not nothing. But what they do, when asked with real attention and received with real listening, is remarkable. They tell the other person, I am still curious about you. You have not become invisible to me. Your interior life still matters enough to me that I am asking about it. And that message, delivered not in words but in the quality of the question, is one of the most quietly powerful things one partner can offer another. Pick one question, ask it tonight, and then put down everything else and actually listen to what comes back. The third step, create one moment that is just yours. The parallel marriage, in its spatial reality, is two people who share a home but have stopped making deliberate, intentional, chosen contact with each other. They pass through the same spaces. They are near each other constantly, but the quality of nearness is incidental rather than chosen. They are next to each other the way furniture is next to each other, by arrangement, not by intention. What rebuilds connection is not proximity. It is deliberate, chosen, consistent contact. A specific moment that happens reliably, that both people know is theirs, that does not get traded away for convenience or fatigue. For some couples, this is the morning. Before the phones come on and before the day makes its first demand, there are 10 minutes, a cup of coffee, a few words that are not about the schedule, a small shared quiet, that belong only to the two of them. The day can have the rest. These minutes are theirs. For others it is the reunion, the moment of coming back together after the separation of the day. Gottman's research on what happens in those first few minutes when couples reunite is striking. The quality of that greeting, the presence or absence of genuine attention in those moments, has measurable effects on the rest of the evening. A real look, an actual hello that lands, 6 seconds of contact that says, "You came home and I noticed and I'm glad." For others it is the end of the day. A hand found in the dark. A few sentences before sleep that are not about tomorrow. Something small and true from today, offered to the person who is right there, who is always right there, and who deserves to receive it. The specific form matters less than the commitment to it. The willingness to say, "This moment is ours." It does not get canceled. It does not get eaten by busyness. It happens even on the hard days, even when we're tired, even when we don't have much to say, because consistency is what transforms a small gesture into something the nervous system can actually learn from. The fourth step, offer something real from the inside. This step is the one that most directly challenges the core pattern of the parallel marriage, the retreat into separate, private interior worlds, and it is the one that requires the most courage. So I want to say something honest about that courage before I describe the step itself. Vulnerability in the parallel marriage has been trained away, not all at once, gradually, through a series of small experiences, reaching and finding no one there, sharing something real and having it met with distraction or advice, saying something tender and watching it land without much response. None of those experiences were necessarily unkind, but they taught the nervous system something. They taught it that the interior life is safer kept private, that this relationship, whatever its other qualities, is not quite the place to bring what's most real. And now the withholding feels natural, feels like simply who you are, feels less like protection and more like personality. Reintroducing vulnerability means choosing deliberately and with full awareness of the discomfort to share something real anyway, not something huge, not a revelation, something from the actual interior life that has been living only in the private world. A worry you've been carrying since last week. A hope you haven't mentioned. Something that moved you, a conversation, a memory, a thing you read that you didn't share because you got out of the habit of sharing. Something true offered to the person who is still there. And the reason to do this before you feel safe doing it is this: vulnerability does not follow safety. Vulnerability creates it. When one person steps out of the protected zone and offers something real, the relational temperature shifts. Even slightly, even imperceptibly. It creates an opening that was not there before. An invitation that is felt even if it isn't immediately accepted. The parallel marriage pattern says, keep it to yourself. The countermove is simply, don't. Share something small and true tonight, and then do it again tomorrow. And watch, over time, what begins to happen in the space between you. The fifth step, go back to the things you left unaddressed. Gottman's research has a finding that I return to constantly, because I think it reframes the entire question of what makes relationships succeed or fail. It is this: the difference between couples who thrive over time and couples who quietly drift apart is not the absence of conflict, rupture, or disconnection. It is the presence of repair. In the parallel marriage, what has created much of the current distance is not one large wound. It is the accumulation of dozens of small ones that no one went back for. The conversation where one partner shared something and the other was distracted and it never got revisited. The evening where someone needed closeness and got logistics instead. The bid that went unnoticed, not once but over and over, until the person stopped bidding. Those small ruptures do not require grand repair. They require acknowledgement. The specific, genuine, offered without performance acknowledgement that something happened, that you noticed it, and that you care enough to come back to it. Sounds like this. I wasn't really with you the other night when you were trying to tell me about that. I was somewhere else in my head. I'm sorry. If you want to tell me again, I'm actually here now. Or, I think I've been hard to reach lately. I know that. And I don't want you to carry things without me because I'm not showing up. Or simply, I think I missed something the other day. What was actually going on for you? These are not eloquent sentences. They don't have to be. What makes them powerful is the specificity. Specific acknowledgement says something that generic apology cannot say. I was paying enough attention to notice what happened. I care enough about you to come back to it. You were not invisible to me, even in the moment when I failed to respond. Repair, practiced again and again, changes the feeling of a relationship. It says, the ruptures between us are not permanent. I will come back. Because coming back is what love does. The sixth step. Do something together that is not your routine. The final step is the most concrete and the most immediately doable. And it is this: choose a shared experience that lives completely outside the ordinary structure of your parallel lives. Not a vacation necessarily. Not something that requires planning or money or a free weekend that doesn't exist in your calendar. Something simpler than that. A walk with no destination and no phones, with the only agreement being that this hour is just for the two of you. Cooking something neither of you has made before. Not because the food is the point, but because standing in the kitchen together with a shared small project generates a kind of easy side-by-side conversation that the couch almost never does. Or going back to somewhere that carries a memory, a neighborhood you used to walk, a restaurant from before children, a film that meant something to you once, and letting the memory of who you were to each other then be present in the room with who you are now. The neuroscience of shared novel experience is genuinely worth knowing here. When two people do something new together, genuinely outside the established routine, the brain responds in ways that favor connection. Dopamine is released. The sense of aliveness and reward that characterize the early stages of the relationship gets activated, not identically to how it felt then, but in measurable, real ways. Novelty is not just pleasant, it is neurologically connective, and in a long-term relationship, it is one of the most accessible tools available for creating conditions in which closeness feels possible again. You don't need an adventure. You need something different from what you usually do. And you need to do it with your full attention on each other, not two people who happen to be in the same place, each half present, but two people who chose this together intentionally for no other reason than that they are still choosing each other. What one person can actually do. I want to come back to this before we close, because I think it is the most important practical thing in this entire video. You do not need to wait for both of you to be ready. The parallel marriage is stable in its way. Nobody is in acute pain. Nobody is loudly unhappy. The boat is sitting still, and rocking a still boat feels like something you'd have to justify, something you'd have to explain, something that might make things worse before they get better. But relationship systems are not actually still, even when they look like they are. They are held in place by the consistent behavior of both people. Change the behavior of one person genuinely, consistently over time, and the system cannot remain what it was. It has to respond, because you are part of it and you have moved, and systems move in response to their parts. Your partner may take a while to respond. That is okay. The patterns of parallel living are deep and they don't reorganize in a week. But consistent change, real, sustained, genuine change in how you show up, creates a new atmosphere. Slowly, quietly, the way temperature changes in a room when you open a window. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. You can be the one who begins. Not to fix everything. Not to force something your partner hasn't chosen. Just to begin. One real question. One true thing shared. One moment of genuine contact. One small rupture acknowledged and addressed. One experience chosen together. Begin there. And then begin again the next day. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, everything. We have spent real time together today with something that I know many people are living quietly and without quite enough language for. The parallel marriage. Two people, same house, same table, same bed, same life on the surface, and somehow without anyone choosing it, not quite sharing each other. Running alongside in lives that almost never make real contact. We looked at what it feels like from the inside. The faded curiosity. The surface-level conversations. The evenings that pass in separate worlds. The particular loneliness of being alone while not being alone. The hard things you carry to other people now instead of to them. We looked at how it happens. Through attachment histories that learn to keep the interior life safe by keeping it private. Through the slow disappearance of the habits that used to make intimacy happen naturally. Through the accumulation of small unrepaired moments until the distance between you became the shape of the relationship. And then we looked at 6 ways back. Name it honestly, gently, with care. Rebuild curiosity, ask the real question, the one you stopped asking. Create a daily point of contact, small, consistent, just yours. Reintroduce vulnerability. Share something true from the private world. Repair the small ruptures, go back for the things you left unaddressed. Choose a shared experience. Something different, something outside the routine. Something done together with full presence. And through all of it, remember, one person is enough to begin. One person moving genuinely toward connection changes the atmosphere of a marriage. Slowly. Quietly. But really, you don't need a crisis to justify wanting more than this. The quiet ache of the parallel marriage is reason enough. The memory of what closeness felt like is reason enough. The knowledge that it is possible again. Not easily, not overnight, but genuinely, with intention and with time, that is reason enough. One step. Tonight. In the direction of the person who is still there. That is where it begins. That is always where it begins. I want to hear from you. Which of the 6 steps feels most possible right now? Which one feels most frightening? Leave it in the comments. Your honesty down there matters more than you know. It creates a community of people who are willing to look clearly at something real and decide to do something about it. If this landed somewhere true for you, if it named something you've been living with but couldn't quite say out loud, please share it with your partner. You don't have to explain it first. Just send it. Let it be the opening of something. Subscribe to Secure Love Psychology. Come back next week. Because this is not a one-time conversation, it is a direction. And I want to keep walking it with you. I'll see you then. Take care of each other. And if there's only one thing you do today, ask one real question. To the person who is still there. Still yours. Still waiting in their own quiet way to be asked.